Imagine this. You come home from a long trip, excited to relax, and you notice your stash looks lighter. Too light. And the worst part? You know exactly who did it. Now, most people would get angry, maybe yell, maybe demand money back. But me. I decided to let karma roll up its own little surprise joint, and my roommate walked right into it. Before I get into this story, let me ask you, have you ever had someone take advantage of your kindness, assuming you'd never notice? If so, smash that like button, subscribe if you love stories of justice and payback, and let's dive into one of the pettiest and funniest roommate revenge stories you'll ever hear. Living with a roommate can be either a blessing or a nightmare. For me, it started out somewhere in between. My roommate wasn't terrible. He wasn't blasting music at 3 a.m. or leaving dirty dishes in the sink for weeks. But he had one habit, one sneaky little flaw, that slowly started to eat away at me. He couldn't keep his hands off my stash. Now let me set the stage. I've always been someone who enjoyed smoking a little weed to unwind. Nothing crazy, nothing excessive, just enough to take the edge off a long day. My roommate, though, he loved it even more than I did. He was always rolling up, always talking about strains, always ready for the next high. I wasn't stingy. In fact, I went out of my way to be generous. My rule was simple. If you want to smoke while I'm out, just ask me first. That's it. One small courtesy. I thought it was fair. I thought it was respectful. After all, I was willing to share. All he had to do was acknowledge that it wasn't his. But here's the thing, he never asked a tea first. I tried to shrug it off. It was just a little missing, nothing too noticeable. I told myself, it's not worth starting a fight over. But deep down, every time I saw that jar a little lighter than it should have been, I felt that sting. That frustration you get when someone disrespects you, even in small ways, because it wasn't about the weed anymore. It was about respect. It was about trust. I had given him permission under one condition, that he couldn't even bother to honor it. Instead, he acted like my stash was some kind of communal resource, like I wouldn't notice if he skimmed off the top every now and then. And that's when a little sea of irritation started to grow inside me. I wasn't angry enough to blow up at him, but I also wasn't willing to let it slide forever. Then, one day, opportunity knocked. I was planning a long vacation, a full month away from the apartment. And while packing my bags, I looked at my desk and noticed something, a small pouch of catnip. My cats love the stuff. Whenever I sprinkled it on the floor, they'd go wild, rolling around, pawing at it, purring like engines. And that's when it hit me, catnip looks suspiciously similar to weed. Same kind of shredded green leaves, same texture, even the same smell if you weren't really paying attention. I stared at that pouch and felt a grin spread across my face. If my roommate was bold enough to steal from me when I wasn't home, maybe it was time he got a little surprise, because respect is earned. And if he wasn't going to give me mine willingly, maybe I'd just let karma do the work for me, with a little help from my cats. The night before my trip, I stood in my room with two baggies in front of me, one with my actual weed and one with my cat's favorite toy catnip. Side by side, they could have been twins. If you weren't paying close attention, you'd never know the difference. I tucked my real stash away somewhere safe, hidden in a spot my roommate would never think to check. But the catnip? Oh, that I placed front and center. On my desk sat my old bong, dusty and used, but still perfectly convincing. I left it right next to the bag of catnip and a rolling tray, like I'd just been mid-session before deciding to leave for my trip. Everything about the setup screamed, "Hey man, here's the good stuff, don't mind if I do." IT was a perfect trap, and the beauty of it was its simplicity. All I had to do was nothing. Just let temptation do the heavy lifting, and I knew my roommate too well. He had this habit of wandering into my room when I wasn't around. Not for anything malicious, he just treated boundaries like suggestions. My stuff was his stuff in his head, so I didn't have to wonder if he'd take the bait. I only had to wonder how much. That night, as I zipped up my suitcase and prepped for my flight, I kept glancing at the little bag on the desk, imagining the look on his face when the truth finally came out. Would he notice? Would he think something was off? Or would he blaze through it without a second thought? Knowing him, I had my answer already. The next morning, I left for vacation with a little extra pep in my step. As the plane took off, I wasn't just excited for beaches and cocktails. I was excited for what I'd come home to. For the next month, my roommate lived his life like normal. I wasn't there, but I could practically picture him. Coming home from work, kicking off his shoes, seeing that bag on my desk and thinking, score. He left some out. I imagined him grinding it up, packing a bowl, maybe even rolling a joint, sitting back as smoke filled his lungs. None the wiser that he was enjoying a nice calming session of kitty party herps. My tea made me laugh just thinking about it. But even as the weeks went by, a small part of me wondered, what if he noticed? What if he realized the taste wasn't quite right, or the effects weren't there? Maybe he'd catch on before I returned. Maybe my plan would flop, and he'd just toss it aside without ever mentioning it. I try not to dwell on it. After all, I was on vacation. I had beaches to walk, sunsets to watch, drinks to sip. But still, in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but look forward to that moment of truth when I got back, because whether he admitted it or not, I was going to know. The bag would tell me everything. A month later, suitcase in hand, I unlocked the door to our apartment. The familiar smell of the place hit me immediately, faint traces of stale smoke, leftover food, and the unmistakable aura of a lived-in bachelor pad. I dropped my bag, stretched, and felt that little spark of anticipation flicker in my chest. I headed straight to my room. My desk was exactly where I'd left it, tray bong baggy. But one thing had changed. The catnip bag was lighter. A lot lighter. I froze for a second, staring at it. My grin crept up slowly, like a rising sun. There it was, proof. He hadn't just nibbled, he had indulged. I picked up the bag, gave it a little shake, and laughed under my breath. Oh man, he really did it, I whispered to myself. The satisfaction washed over me like a wave. My trap had worked, and now all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to spring the truth. As if on cue, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My roommate appeared in the doorway, wearing that laid-back grin he always wore when he wanted something. Hey man, you're back. How was the trip? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I just held up the bag between my fingers, dangling it like evidence. Hey, did you smoke this while I was gone? For a split second, I saw the panic in his eyes. Then came the sheepish laugh, the guilty smile. He scratched the back of his head and muttered, yeah, man, just a little. Hope that's cool. I raised an eyebrow, my face unreadable. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice calm, even casual. You know what this is, right? He blinked at me, confused. Yeah, weed. What else? I shook my head slowly. Nah, dude. That's not weed. That's catnip. The silence that followed was priceless. His smile faltered, his brow furrowed. No way. You're messing with me. Smell it, I said, holding the bag out. He hesitated, then leaned in and took a sniff. At first, nothing. Then his eyes widened. His face went slack. He sniffed again, deeper this time, and realization dawned on him like a storm cloud rolling in. Oh my God, he whispered. I smoked catnip. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I burst out laughing, clutching my stomach. Yep. Rolled it, packed it, smoked it, the whole deal. You've been lighting up my cat's stash for weeks. He just sat there, stunned, the color draining from his face. Then, slowly, the corners of his mouth twitched upward. That's messed up, man, he said, trying to laugh it off, but I wasn't done. I leaned back in my chair, still smirking, and said, you know what's really messed up? You only smoked it because you didn't ask. If you had just asked, I would have told you not to touch it. That shut him up. His laugh faded, replaced by a sheepish silence. For the first time, I think he realized just how much he'd been taking advantage of me, and in that silence, I felt the sweet satisfaction of justice settling in. The room was heavy with silence after I dropped the truth on him. My roommate sat across from me, staring at the bag of catnip like it had betrayed him personally. His shoulders slumped, his grin gone, and all that was left was this weird mix of embarrassment and disbelief. He rubbed his temples, muttering, man, I can't believe it. I smoked catnip. Like a catnip. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded, letting the weight of the moment hang there. I wasn't angry, not anymore. In fact, I felt calm, collected. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted. He wasn't the one sneaking around, laughing behind my back. Now he was the punchline. Finally, he looked up at me, trying to mask his embarrassment with a laugh. That's kind of messed up, though. You set me up. I raised an eyebrow. Set you up? You think I forced you to smoke it? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. No answer, I pressed on, my voice firm but calm. I told you from the start, if you ever wanted to smoke my stash, just ask. That's it. But you never asked, man. You just took. Over and over. And you thought I wouldn't notice. He shifted uncomfortably, like a kid getting scolded. Yeah, but he trailed off. The excuse never came. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. See, here's the thing. If you had asked, I would have said no. I would have told you that bag wasn't weed. But you didn't. You assumed. And now you've been smoking catnip for a month. Tell me again how that's my fault. The look on his face was priceless. His laugh, which had started as a chuckle to save face, died completely. He sat there, processing the situation, realizing he had no one to blame but himself. I could see it click in his mind. He had crossed the line too many times, and this time karma had smacked him square in the face. Wrapped up in rolling papers, after a long pause, he finally sighed. All right, you got me. That's on me. I shouldn't have taken it without asking. And just like that, the tension in the room shifted. The edge of confrontation softened. My smirk returned, and I couldn't help but laugh again. You're damn right. Next time, check the label before you smoke. That actually got a laugh out of him, too. A real one, not the nervous kind. He shook his head, chuckling. Man, I swear, only you would come up with something like this. We ended up laughing together, the tension melting into humor. But beneath the laughter, the lesson stuck. He knew he had been caught, humbled, and outplayed. The confrontation didn't end in yelling, or threats, or slam doors. It ended in quiet understanding. He finally admitted his mistake. And while he wasn't the type to change overnight, I knew one thing for sure, he'd never smoke anything of mine again without double-checking it first, and that was all I needed. After that day, things between me and my roommate shifted in a subtle but undeniable way. It wasn't like he turned into a saint overnight, but the catnip incident carved a line in the sand. He knew he had crossed it before, and now he'd been caught in the most humiliating way possible. For weeks after, every time he walked into my room, he'd eye anything green with suspicion. If there was a jar on my desk, he'd hover near it, take a long sniff, and then ask, "This isn't catnip, right?" I'd just smirk and say, "Guess you'll never know." Watching him hesitate, second-guessing himself, was almost as satisfying as the revenge itself. The funny thing was, he never stopped sneaking a little from my stash. That was just who he was, impulsive, unable to resist temptation. But he did change one habit. From then on, he always smell-tested first. And honestly, that was enough for me. Every time I caught him being cautious, I felt that little spark of victory all over again. What stuck with me most wasn't the prank itself, but the shift in respect. Before, he acted like my stuff was automatically his. After he realized I wasn't oblivious, that I noticed, that I cared, and that I was willing to teach him a lesson if he kept crossing boundaries. And for me, that was the real win. It wasn't about the weed, or even about the catnip. It was about proving a point. Respect isn't optional. Trust isn't free. You can laugh and joke all you want, but at the end of the day, if you take advantage of someone's kindness, don't be surprised when karma comes rolling back your way. Sometimes in the form of a joint filled with catnip. Over time, the story became one of those inside jokes we'd tell mutual friends. He'd laugh about how he once smoked an entire bag of catnip, and I'd laugh about how easily he fell for it. People loved it. Some said it was cruel. Others said it was genius. But everyone agreed it was unforgettable. And honestly, I didn't feel bad. Not for a second. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't always have to be destructive or mean-spirited. Sometimes the best revenge is harmless, funny, and just humiliating enough to drive the lesson home. That day, my roommate learned that sneaky behavior has consequences. And I learned that the sweetest kind of justice is the one that leaves you both laughing at the end, even if one of you laughs a little less at first. So yeah, he smoked catnip. And every time I look back, I can't help but grin. Because in that one ridiculous moment, balance was restored. Boundaries were respected. And karma? Well, karma rolled itself a fat one and passed it his way.